And the thing about it, as I continue to do this work, as I continue to study, I need people to understand that this is not just surface level. This is deep, right? Incarceration retrains the brain. How trauma lives in the nervous system. Nobody talk about that part. We want to say, get a job. And although a job and housing is vital, but if you do not teach a man about the head, mental health, the heart, emotional regulation, then what he do with his hands will not last.
Hello, welcome back. This is Andreea Parc.
And Alexa Dumitru.
And this is Alive.Again podcast, a podcast where attorneys and other professionals meet to discuss real life challenges and how our decisions shaped our journeys. Our guest today is the amazing Shelia Bruno. She is an author, uncommon reentry coach and consultant, truth teller, speaker, post-incarceration syndrome educator and trainer. I loved this. Your book is called Wife After Prison, Caught in the Aftermath of the Second Sentence. Thank you, Sheila, for being here with us today. Such a pleasure to have you.
It is indeed an honor to be here. So I want to thank the both of you for the opportunity to be here today and to share my mission and my heart, my passion, and my purpose with you guys.
At the beginning of every episode, I like to mention where I met the guest. And I would like to mention that I found you on LinkedIn. And every post that I read and everything that you have shared resonated so much with me. The second sentence and the post-incarceration syndrome. And I would love to talk about this because this is such an enormous work that you're doing for the community. Thank you so much.
It is my pleasure. You know, this mission landed in my life, right? Having reunited with Kevin after 38 years, dated in the ninth grade, used to walk me to class and hold my books and buy me snacks in the snack bar. And we reunited after 38 years and I found out that he had been incarcerated for 28 plus years. And the guy just got up one day and made a bad decision that cost him 28 years of his life. Kevin and I got married 2014, everything lovely. And then in 2016, I began to see some behaviors, right? Wasn't the man that I said I do to. Didn't know what was going on with Kevin. I remember going to him one day saying, "You changing on me." I said, "Had I changed?" And he just said no with a period, no explanation. And so that's how everything started. That's how I discovered the psychological impact of incarceration. Look for support, look for conversation. And then I was like, I don't believe this is not making the top 10 lists in reentry programs, in conversation. Nobody's talking about this. So I created a movement. All right. And when I created this, I found out that there were so many others who were dealing with this, not just family members, but citizens who have come home or they're still incarcerated. They are experiencing the psychological impact of incarceration, and it's like it's a hush. So it's like, not on my watch, it's not. When it came up in here and disrupted my marriage, not on my watch. So that's how Wife After Prison started.
And both of us have an interesting perspective, having watched our loved one be incarcerated and to see it from a different perspective. because scary enough, a large part of the prison population, it's not their first time being there. And many families and generations of incarcerated people. And it's something that changes in people. And it's so interesting, and it's such powerful work to do that from your perspective.
It is. And the thing that got me once again was, ain't nobody talking about this. Ain't nobody talking about how our loved ones are coming home from prison and we don't even recognize who they are. Ain't nobody talking about the person that we visited in the visitation room. It's not the same person that is coming home. Nobody's talking about when we're in the visitation room, he's laughing and he's talking and we're having a good time. But when they come home, he's off to himself, right? Nobody is talking about the psychological and the emotional and the behavior changes that occur in our family members. And then on top of that, how that behavior attaches itself to us. Nobody's talking about the trauma. Nobody's having this conversation in the reentry spaces. Y'all talking about get a job? And these individuals, no disrespect, have been living in a cage for 30 years, for 5 years, for 10 years. And you think that they come home and they're not going to be affected? And I have to be the first to say it. Kevin had been out 4 years when he and I reconnected. I never even thought about it. When Kevin and I reconnected and we were talking on the phone, long distance, I was in Parc, Afghanistan, he was over here. And then when he started talking about marriage, I was like, I need to ask this brother some questions, right? And so every time we would talk, I would have a laundry list of questions that I would ask him. But there was one question I didn't ask, and I didn't consider. How did prison affect you? How did prison change you? And then after all of the commotion and all of this, he said, Sheila, had you asked me that question, I probably would have said it did not.
Right, I meant to say, I don't think it's conscious. I mean, I've been in almost 3 years. And when I got home, I had to learn how to walk on the street, wear normal clothes. I'm not talking about learning how to use an iPhone, because before I used a BlackBerry.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to use an iPhone.
Yeah.
And it took me probably 2 years get used to the normal life.
Yeah.
And it was less than 3 years.
Yeah.
I can only imagine what it can be for a person of 28 years.
Wow, I'm telling you, it is such a transition because those individuals have adapted to that lifestyle.
Yeah.
Just recently, I was having a conversation with someone, and her loved one, she said, he has all the answers and he just think he's right, but he has adapted to that lifestyle and that mindset. So we out here, something's wrong with us because we don't think like they think, right? Because all of that has been ingrained in their brains and in their muscles. And the thing about it, as I continue to do this work, as I continue to study, I need people to understand that this is not just surface level. This is deep, right? Incarceration retrains the brain. How trauma lives in the nervous system. Nobody talk about that part. We want to say, get a job. And although a job and housing is vital, but if you do not teach a man about the head, mental health, the heart, emotional regulation, then what he do with his hands will not last.
I mean, think about any other trauma, right? If you have a loved one pass away, people are so understanding of that trauma and how it's affected you. And inherently, that's a moment of trauma. Now, it's when somebody's incarcerated, it's years of trauma. So why you'd think that sounds backwards?
Let me tell you something. You're talking my language now. Yeah, because I was like, and the thing is that I've created what I call, it's a framework, what I've called the 3D plus the V. Okay. The first D is the disruption. That's the pre-incarceration trauma. Child abandonment, molestation at 7, mom OD'd at 10, shot at 15, already you're in the foster care system. This is before you went to prison, and you never dealt with all of this trauma, right? The second layer is the disconnection. That's the incarceration trauma. We ain't talking about that. You become disconnected with yourself because you have to suppress your emotions to survive inside. And so you're disconnected with yourself. You're seeing all of the fights and the violence and the strip searches and all of that. So that's trauma. So now you got your disruption, right? Your pre-incarceration trauma. Then you have your disconnection. That's the incarceration trauma. And then you come home. That's the distress layer. That's the post-incarceration trauma. Expectations, parole checklist, reentry and relationships, expectations. You've never dealt with any of that trauma. And then that's what I call the view. Vicarious trauma. That's us. The families, right? We see this. We witness this. And so you have all of this trauma living in your nervous system, all of this trauma that has rewired your brain. How do you expect a person just to function? How do you?
And on top of all of that, nobody gives them a job. So get a job, do this, do that. But when you have felon written on your forehead,
yeah,
that's another.
Right. Yeah. So that's another challenge. And this is my take on that. Okay. If I woke up in the morning and they said, okay, Sheila, you can run all the reentry programs in the world, pre-release programs in the world, what would you do? Incorporate PICS training and education before they get out. Right? Because when they get out, what's the first thing? Because these programs have been inside and they've been telling them about these jobs. They've been telling them how to fill these resumes out. They've been doing all of these mock trainings for an individual that has been incarcerated for decades, and you have not talked about his mental. Jobs are vital, but let me show you what happens when you put, this is another framework, the head, the heart, and the hands. H3 framework that I created, right? But let me show you what happens when you put the hands before the head. So one of my very first mentees, 40 years, 2 life sentences, expected to die inside. One night they came to his cell and say, hey, get your stuff, you're making chain in the morning. This man never expected to leave prison. He said, Ms. Bruno, I thought I was going to die in prison. So he gets up, he goes to the transitional home. The transitional home has a contract with a company that hired him 2 weeks after he did 40 years. So he gets on this job. An employee accidentally bump into him. Right? You ain't doing no bumping into people in prison. Right? Accidentally bumped into him and said something to him. You know what the citizen coming home told the supervisor? If he say one more thing to me, y'all gonna have to life flight him out of here. That's what happens when you take an individual and he has not went through this period of debrief or you know what I'm saying? You have to put them in a space where you teach them what has happened to you. You have to be able to tell them the why you behave in such a manner, and why it worked on the inside and why it will not work on the outside. They know the why, right? Because on TikTok, I never wanted to do TikTok. Scared TikTok streets, man, let me tell you something. I'm like, oh, TikTok. But I did. October last year, I made one video. 5 ways that prison changes you, but not how you think. That thing went viral. Shared over 6,000 times. Over 2,500 comments. The majority of the comments from citizens and their family members. And you know what they were saying? Thank you for clarity. Thank you for talking about this. A husband said, thank you. I sent your video to my wife so she can understand me. Because when you've been in that environment so long and you're limited conversation, right? Limited, you're not having really meaningful relational conversations. So you really don't know how to articulate a lot. Thank you. Thank you for sharing this. Thank you. Just thank you, man. So this is why it's so important that we talk about the why.
Yeah.
So, in your point of view, when should this processing period happen? Before they're released or in the halfway house?
They release. Because then, again, when you come out that door, you still have that survival mindset. But now you're thinking about how I'm going to survive out here. I know how to survive in there. Sell some noodles or do some haircuts or do whatever I do. I know how to get it out there. But out here, this is a different type of survival. So all they thought I'm talking about is a job. I'm going to get a job. So yeah, the conversation needs to start in there, right? I would say pre-release 18 months. Start having now at the pre-release unit. And I'm so pleased to say that my book, The Second Sentence, it has been recognized and introduced and is now being used in 2 prisons as part of their pre-release program. And so it's been a long road, guys. It has. For the first 3 years, I was on an island by myself. Hey, prison outside of me. Hey, y'all know? Nobody, the citizens coming home, they can relate, the family members. But the ones in those reentry spaces, right? Those mental health professionals, what that girl talking about? She just talking, that's just PTSD, da-da-da-da. And I just stayed on that, it's PTSD, it's PICS, right? And then, prayerfully, people began to lean in. They start leaning into the conversation. So I am eternally grateful for the lean in. Yeah.
And for those who are unfamiliar, can you please tell our listeners what are few signs of post-incarceration syndrome, and how can families recognize this in a person?
So post-incarceration syndrome is a cluster of emotional, psychological, and behavior symptoms that's born from trauma, from stress, and living in survival mode for years. So that's why it was so important for me to know the signs. What does this look like, right? Post-incarceration syndrome. There are 5 core components. Institutionalization. We would throw this around like, it's just institutionalized, but I need to know what they look like, right? Social sensory deprivation, right? When you have your senses are locked down just like your body, because inside there's same sights, same sounds, no interaction, right? And then there's antisocial personality trait. There's PTSD, and I'm going to always put that symptoms, because some want to say that's PTSD. And then there's substance use numbing. So within these 5 core components, there's some behaviors, right? So that's what I needed to know. What does that look like? So that's withdrawn, that's isolation, that's emotional numbing, that's easily irritated by the least things, that's aggression, having to wake up. Some people, and depending on your prison, and I have to say this, let me back up. Prison is not a one-size-fits-all experience, right? Everybody's journey is different. So what I'm sharing is coming from patterns, it's coming from stories and lived experience. So please keep that in mind as we explore the weight of incarceration. So again, emotionally shut down, sensory shut down. A wife just shared. Her husband just came home. She had just simple, lovingly gesture dinner party. He left. And she Asked him why. He said it's too much. He felt overwhelmed, anxiety, right? She didn't understand that. So this is why, what to answer your question, what family members, the first and most important thing that you can do to support your loved one is understanding. You can't do nothing outside of understanding. That's one of the questions I get asked all the time. How can I support my loved one? Understand. When women reach out to me, how can I support my husband? Understand. Have you purchased my book? Have you sent him a copy of the second sentence? And if you haven't, you're not going to be effective in supporting your loved one, because you have to understand these symptoms. So when he walks out, you're not taking it personal. You know that it's a trauma response. When he has a meltdown in the grocery store because his senses is saying, hey, this is too much too soon. You know, you don't think he just, no. That's a trauma response. So a lot of times and I had to learn that with Kevin. Yes, he loved me. He did. So I had to learn that his actions, they weren't towards me. He was just reacting to the trauma. The first and most important, and I'm not talking about surface level understanding. I'm talking about, you got to understand this beast. You got to understand. And then on top of that, you're going to have to put some boundaries in place for your life. Right? Because there's going to be some behaviors come out of that and you be like, hold up. Right? And so what self-care became to me, self-care wasn't about bubble baths no more. It was about boundaries. It was about therapy. Self-care for me was journaling, talking, and walking. Self-care became community. Because we have to heal, but we can't heal in silence. So the first thing they got to understand. There's no way around that one right there. Understand? Right? Learn. Be willing to set some time aside, come off of your phone, stop scrolling, and get in these books and learn. I put it all out there for them. I created what I didn't have. I didn't have a book. I didn't have a community, right? Just recently released for the children in such a soft manner that they can understand. They need to understand why mommy come home and she don't want to hug me, or daddy, they're not affectionate. They need to understand, because if they don't understand, they'll begin to take it personal. So why aren't we having the conversation with the children? We can talk to the children about being a bully. We can talk to the children about they lost grandma. Why can't we talk to the children about incarceration?
I have a question. Yeah. Yes, you did. I have a question about how those traits are different between men and women.
PICS don't discriminate. And again, this is the thing. Everybody's journey is different. Uniquely, right? Every prison is different. Some prisons, in Mississippi, he said, Sheila, I'm about to go crazy. He said, every day somebody get killed, right? So of course that's gonna affect someone deeper than somebody that, I did my time in federal prison. We had to do this, and they wasn't exposed to that level of trauma. So it doesn't discriminate. Don't care if you're black, don't care if you're white, it don't care if you're 18 going in or you're 54 going in. If you go in those gates, you're going to be affected coming out. When I first started this, of course, I'm trying to find out, okay, Sheila, before you get out here with all this, you got to make sure that you and Kevin ain't the only one. This ain't just in your head. So I had a Facebook Live, 12 panelists. All of them had been to prison. Women and men. Their sentences ranged from 2 years to 2 life sentences. So before we started, I polled each and every one of them. And I asked them, were you affected by your prison sentence? And without hesitation, 11 of them said yes, without hesitation. But there was one in one of the worst prisons in Texas. And he swayed. I don't know whether it was ego or pride, or he just didn't want, he did 25. He had 2 life sentences. But 2 weeks later, he hit me up. He said, say, sis, where can I get a copy of your book? I need my lady friend to understand me. You didn't want to acknowledge it in public, but you acknowledged it privately with me. And I'm okay with that. Because as Lester Young said, can you stand in the rain and not get wet?
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so much to talk about here, and that's the reason why I admire your work, because everything that you're talking about, I've been through. I mean, I've been in MCC for 8 months, which is a maximum security, and then 25 months in a camp. Yeah, it doesn't discriminate, and regardless of your education and color and culture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't. It doesn't.
It's,
A wife, she wanted to debate. Oh, my man, good. My man read 1,000 books. Okay, it said psychologically, not intellectually, he's sharp. Psychologically,
Good for him.
when he
yeah.
out of here, I want you to talk to me then, right? I mean, because there are some people in denial is dangerous.
Oh, yeah.
And just to be transparent and raise awareness. So there was this lady in my group. I created what I needed, the Facebook Wife After Prison Facebook private group, grew to 1,500 women, right? So there was this lady who cheerleader, yeah, rah, 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 yeah, yeah, yeah. So her guy was getting out. He couldn't parole to her state. So she uprooted her life, quit a job, put a house up for rent, moved to where he was. So I'm thinking, okay, I'm not going to reach out to her whenever, she reach out, let me know how things going. Within 72 hours, Miss Sheila, PICS is real. PICS is real. Oh my God, what have I done? And she said, I have to be honest with you. I listened at what you were saying, but I didn't believe it. She said, what am I going to do now? I've quit my job. I got these people in my house. Look, and I tell them, look, I'm not talking just to give my mouth something to do. Right? Very introvert. Very. So this here is the big mission. For me to get out here and fit these videos and speaking and all of that, man, let me tell you something. I'm not just out here to do this. I'm out here because I was called to do this, right?
Yeah.
The pain, it pushed me, but the purpose, it pulled me. So I'm not just out here trying to do nothing, but raise awareness and help change lives and help save lives.
Yeah. The 95% of our decisions are emotional. So if we're not aware of our thought patterns, then we make bad decisions.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very important to understand that.
We have to understand, and I get the question all the time about how did I forgive Kevin? And just for the record, Kevin and I did get a divorce. Right? However, we're still the best of friends. I have mad love for him. He has mad love for me. We still do this work together. But for me, and I had worked so hard on myself prior to reconnecting with Kevin, personal development program, coaching programs, and therapy and all of that. I was becoming. And I loved the woman that I was becoming, right? And so this began to affect me in the manner that, not that I didn't don't love him, but I had to choose me, right? Because for him, he said, Sheila, he said, I'm so sorry that I pulled you into this messed up life of mine. And he said, for me, therapy would have to be a lifestyle, right? But for me, I hear what you're saying. Are you willing to make it a lifestyle? Because I'm not willing to be taking these sleeping pills like they're M&Ms to cope. So we still mad love for Kevin Bruno. So yeah, need to throw that out there. Yeah, good guy.
So it's very interesting that we talk about this because we've been through this, right? But it's the society out there who don't know much.
Yeah.
And we know that a prison sentence doesn't end at release. What do you want the society out there to better understand about this?
As you said, that it doesn't end at the release. And if people would just take the time to understand and listen at the family members, their stories. You know, a lot of times at reentry conferences, the family members don't get to hold the mic, right? Family members are the number one stakeholders in reentry. And yet they don't get a seat at the table when these programs are being developed. So I want them to understand that prison doesn't end at the gate, you know? And another thing is be open to new, be open to different. So what if everybody is not incorporating PICS education into their trainings? You be the first. So what?
Be the change that you want to see in the world.
Right. And we have receipts. You know, anytime, I had psychologists reaching out to me, Miss Diploma, right? But they said, we have theory. You have receipts, right? So be able to put the mic in the hands of the lived experience and not those who had just studied it or wrote about it. So you have to be willing to do something different. Now, we already know I had to change my approach or my message. I had to tweak it a little bit. Because straight out the gate, I was like, the psychological impact of incarceration. Some years later, like sheep. DOC ain't coming and letting you come in here and talk about no psychological impact of incarceration. Right? So now, understanding post-incarceration syndrome. A lot softer. It lands different. And so now this is where organizations are saying, can you come and present? Can you conduct the webinar? Right? So it's an approach thing, how you approach them. But they need to understand you have to incorporate more than housing and jobs. If you have those things in place, look here, put a dot over that I and say, hey, before we put you on a job, we need you to go through this PICS training, this PICS educational training. So when individuals struggle, they have the language and they can recognize and they have the tools. Just give them the language. It don't cost nothing to give people language.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm doing this work for so long, for myself first.
Okay.
And I know how to coach myself out of a trauma response.
Okay.
I mean, just the other day.
Right, just the other day.
She was alone, and she was telling me this. Anyway. So I was at work, I believe, and we have an intercom downstairs where you swipe and you can see who's at the door, who's calling, and then you open the door. So I saw my phone ringing with the intercom, but I couldn't answer. And when I get home, my mom tells me that it was a guy with a lanyard The lanyard was what sent her into a spiral. She turned off all the lights, locked the doors. And this was last week.
You were triggered by the lanyard.
And then I stopped after I shut off all the lights. I was in sheer panic.
Yeah, yeah.
I stopped.
So let me ask you this. I'm sorry to cut you
Yeah.
off. Because triggers are real and it's so important. So when you have trigger moments, do you write them down?
I don't write them down, no, but I'm able to pull myself out of it because I know what it is and I know it's a trigger.
Okay.
And what I meant to say is that I am able to pull myself out because I know. I could only imagine people that don't know, and your work is it's so important because it informs people of what triggers are
Right.
and how to
Yeah.
come out of that
Right.
panic.
And
It doesn't escalate into something else.
that's one of the things that I teach. The trauma triggers. What are your trauma triggers? Do you even know? And some of them have been in survival so long that they don't even recognize or realize that these are trauma responses and these triggers. Like one man told me, he said that just the jingling of keys,
Yeah.
right? And he said when his wife leaves for work, she has to really carefully put those keys and it's whatever, so that he's not startled or triggered by that. So what I've done with mentees, I said, write them triggers down
Yeah.
and go back and look at them again. So that reminds you, okay, I wrote that down. That's the trigger. That's a trauma response.
Yeah.
That's not who I am. That's my nervous system adjusting. So what triggers you? Because in this thing right here, man, let me tell you something. We got to do the work. This is not surface level stuff. You got to do the work. This is some PhD stuff right here. You have to be willing to do some things you've never done before. Miss Sheila, write it down. Yes, you have to write it down. Willing to go to some places that you have never gone before. Once Miss Sheila take you as far as I can take you, brother, you might have to go see a counselor. So that's being willing to go to some places you've never been, be willing to say some things you've never said before. Being vulnerable inside get you hurt, but you have to be willing to say, look, baby, here, I'm struggling with this. Give me a minute. Give me a minute. I'm struggling with this. So that's why I said this is not surface level education. This is deep. Been in there for years. So you've been in there for years. So in 365 days, baby, let me tell you something. 360, and I don't know what it is about that fourth year mark. When I talk to individuals, everything was good. Like it was me and Kevin, everything was good. And I say, how long he been out? And they say 4 years. I don't know what it is about that. Let me tell you something. I take that back. That mask, it's been slide, right? Because a thing about it is going into prison. One of the things that I ask guys, how did you survive? And the majority of them, I had to become. What you have to become? I had to become that dude. I had to become that monster, as Kevin said, so I wouldn't be taken advantage of. And so you wore that mask of a monster, of that dude, for years and for decades. Maybe 5 years pre-release, you say, you know what, I don't even like this dude no more. So you work on taking that mask off. But it took 25. You wore it for 25. And then 5, it's just going to come off. No. And then when you come home, you put on another mask. You got a mask for the family. You got a mask for society. I've been in prison. Prison ain't mess with me. So you got that mask. Right? So when the responsibilities, when the parole checklists and all of this hit you, guess what?
And it's a well-documented thing when it comes to grief. about 2 years after somebody's passing, it's another wave of grief that it's very well documented. A lot of people have it. So it's very possible that it can be something with our incarceration as well. When you go through a big trauma,
Right.
after a certain amount of time, something kind of just clicks.
Right. And if you haven't dealt with it, and the thing with Kevin and I, because his mom worked in the healthcare field, she shared some stuff with me. And I was like, oh, not my man. I was a part of that not my man club. Sheila, okay. It's like, oh. But she saw it, right? When he first come home, she said that he would go toe to toe with his dad. There was a clashing there. But this is the thing. When you have worn that level of aggression for years, right? Then it doesn't just easily come off. And this is one of the most challenging things with reentry in relationships. Women are falling apart, guys. They are so heartbroken because the person that they saw in the visiting room is not necessarily the person who is coming home. So again, I want to thank you guys for this platform because this is a much needed conversation. Anytime I get to share, I'm all in. It's podcasts like yours that gives this post-incarceration syndrome a voice. So the only thing that I ask of you is to keep having these type of conversations. And don't you guys ever drop that mic. Okay?
No.
You as well, because you are so captivating and such an energy about you.
Before we end, I have one more question. It's so much shame and isolation around this incarceration concept. What would you tell families and people who are going through this?
So I would say it's okay. I would say you're not alone. It's life. I would say the only way that you're truly going to heal is you got to face it. And you have to be in community. For the days when you feel weak, your community is there to lift you up. To the citizens who have come home and who is wearing the jacket of the shame and the blame, the straight shooter that I am, it is what it is. It is what it was. That was then. This is now. We can't worry about what the naysayers say. Their opinions of you should not even be a concern of yours. Make the rest of your life the best of your life. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be hard. Reentry is messy, but you have to be willing to put in the work. You cannot get around any of this without putting in the work. You got to work on the shame. You got to work on overcoming that. You have to work on overcoming blame. And it's all going to boil down is how you see yourself. You got to work on becoming.
The image and the story.
You let me tell you something. And this is the thing what I tell people. Make your pain pay. Make your pain pay you. If you're a family member, you supported someone, right? You in and out of prisons, visiting, standing in the lines, being disrespected. Put it in a book. Make your pain pay for it. You're a citizen. You did all this time. You know, you got wisdom, partner. You got some wisdom and some knowledge. Put it in a book. Speak about it. Make your pain pay. Your pain owes you. That's what I did. That's what I did. But my thing is this, and another thing is being embarrassed and being shamed is a choice. That's the way I look at it. Could have been embarrassed. I was on Facebook. I reconnected with Kevin and we getting married. Oh, all on Facebook. 7 years later, with that same energy, on the toned down version, I had to go in and say, go on social media and say, hey, Kevin and I are getting a divorce, because I wanted to be transparent. I didn't want to just tell you about the good and not take you on this journey. I could have been shamed. I could have been embarrassed. But I understand my story is not for me. It's for the people that needs to hear it so that they can start their healing journey. So to answer your question, you can't worry about the opinions of others. Every morning that you wake up, you have to be in that becoming mindset. I'm becoming today. Whatever somebody says about me, it doesn't matter because I'm becoming. If they don't want to give you the job, it's okay. I'm becoming. When they say no, you say next because I'm becoming. So that's what I would say about that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And now that we're at the end, is that one question that I ask every guest, and that is, what is one activity in your life that makes you feel more alive?
Helping people to understand that a prison sentence, it doesn't have to be a life sentence with mental health problems. When I began to serve people, I began to heal in the midst of everything I was going through. Kevin even called me one day. We were divorced then. He said, I'm so proud of you. And I said, for what? He said, you never stopped. Even in the midst of all of this, you never stop. So when I serve people, that gets me out of the bed in the morning. Who can I serve today? But I have to understand, because this is heavy work, and I have to make myself care a priority. It's some days I can't go to the DM. Some days I can't do the social media thing. Not today. But to answer your question, it's when I serve.
But you're still serving somebody by saying no.
Yeah.
You're serving yourself, most importantly.
Exactly. Yeah. Self-care.
You honor yourself.
Yeah. You have to. You really have to.
Radical responsibility for yourself.
I'm learning all of that. It has really been a journey. It has grown me. The resiliency, the level of confidence. I used to be rooms that I'm in now. Baby, I wasn't going to none of that. Oh, if I did, I'm going to sit at the back. But now I sit at the front because I know this conversation right here is too important to hide in the back where nobody could see me. Nobody can hear me. So I go to the front. Love you guys. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, this work, I mean, we have so many people that are not willing to talk about it. When I got to Danbury, to the camp, there were 180 women. 12 of them were attorneys. That percentage is huge. And that's the reason why I'm doing this work, to prevent that from happening and to open my mouth, as you said, not to give something my mouth to do, but it's opening people's hearts and minds.
That's good. So to that, I would say pain push you and purpose is pulling you, right? Because our stories and our experiences, they really aren't about us. What you gonna do with that, Sheila? What you gonna do? So yeah, that's why I open my mouth.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much.
It's been
for your time, for your wisdom.
Yeah. It's been.
We're looking forward to your next book.
Or this current book. We gotta read this current book too.
Yeah. And actually working on the program. I don't know if I mentioned about the gentleman when I was invited to do a virtual event for an organization, and it's streamed inside of DOC Las Vegas, right? And so this was a few years back, and so afterwards, this guy during the Q&A session, this guy came to the mic, and he said, "What's the solution?" He said, "I've tried therapy, and that didn't work." What's the solution? I didn't have an answer. I presented the problem. PICS is the problem. But I didn't have a solution. And I got off of that streaming and cried. I said, you done put all this stuff in this man's head that he already been carrying, and you can't even tell him the solution. And so I went to work. And so the first of next year, then I'll be releasing the solution, a program, the H3 framework, the head, the heart, and the hands. And it's going to be a full premium program from post-incarceration syndrome to the solution to help people to articulate and understand, and even practical tools. If you're not ready for therapy, then do this. So,
And hopefully it will be accepted into prisons.
I'm working on starting that language a bit. Because, baby, wasn't nobody going to let me come in there talking about the psychological impact of nothing.
Yeah. Because, like we used to say, BOP is backwards on purpose.
That's, yeah.
Instead of Bureau of Prisons,
Right.
backwards on purpose. And with your program, hopefully it's gonna be not backwards
And the thing about it,
anymore.
when individuals would invite me to their virtual online courses inside the prison, I say, hey, now y'all know what I'm about. I'm not going to be sugarcoating and watering down. They say, no, come on in. So that's why I said I'm eating, and I'm grateful that people are beginning to lean in the conversation. So I just did this webinar prior to this one. I was watching who was in the room, right? And they had DOC in the room. It was some DOC people, some mental health people, and all of that. They're leaning in. They're leaning in because they're beginning to recognize the symptoms. And the thing about the thing about they're saying PTSD, you can get some data from that, right? So they know who's returning, how many people are returning. There's data for recidivism, but there's no measurement on how it is affecting them. Ain't no measurements there. So there's no data there. But what there is stories.
Yeah.
Stories.
Thank you so much.
It is my pleasure.
It was such a pleasure to have you.
My pleasure as well. I'm honored. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Our listeners, thank you for listening. For more conversations and more guests, please subscribe and follow us. Thank you. We'll see you next week.